You never really notice the moment everything changes. Not with a scream, not with a knife, not with a dramatic goodbye. No, she just smiled, and you thought it meant everything was fine. Let me ask you one thing, not out of curiosity, but for your survival. If someone was quietly, silently stripping you of your power, would you even notice? No? Then keep watching, because that simple smile might have been the moment your crown was stolen, and you are still walking around like you're wearing it. This video, it's not just analysis. This is the distilled wisdom of centuries, from Machiavelli to Marcus Aurelius. Ideas pulled from dusty books and hidden speeches, forged into one fireproof truth. And you're about to hold it in your hands, without reading 100 books, without wasting years. Because most men, they never even stumble across content like this. And when they do, they scroll, because staying blind is easier than accepting certain truths. But you didn't scroll, you didn't run, you're still here. And that means you're different. And right now, just by listening, you're already ahead of most people around you. After this video, your perspective on yourself, on relationships, on power, will never be the same again. Let me tell you a short story. It was a cold autumn night, a quiet cafe, the smell of coffee mixing with the soft sound of piano keys. A man sat across from a woman. She was late. He smiled and said, "It's okay." She pulled out her phone in the middle of the conversation to reply to texts. He stayed quiet, nodded. Then she casually dismissed his idea. And the man, he said, "You're probably right, love." From the outside, it looked like a calm, mature date. But the truth, she was testing, and he was handing over his crown without realizing it. Machiavelli once said, "He who becomes master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it may expect to be destroyed by it." What does that mean for you? If you enter a relationship with a woman who's used to power, but you don't challenge it, don't dismantle the illusion, don't test it, don't think you'll remain king. Let me give you a challenge. How much of your behavior is truly yours? And how much is just a reaction to what she wants? How much of your so-called patience, understanding, kindness would actually just well-dressed weakness? This video is not for playing with your emotions. It's here to wake you up. Because the truth is this: some women don't want to take your power violently. They want you to willingly hand it over, with a smile, with an "it's okay," with a little compromise here, a little silence there. And here's my promise to you: stay until the end. We'll unpack truths that will shift how you see love, loyalty, and manhood. You won't be the same man you were before watching this. And if there's even a small part of you that's been craving answers no one else dared to give you, you'll find them here. But remember this is exactly where the danger begins. Because every truth you skip testing becomes a trap, and the man who doesn't test is the one being tested. You never quite know when it started. Maybe it was the first time you said, "It's fine," even though deep down you knew it wasn't. But you didn't want to seem controlling. You wanted to be different. You wanted to be the man who understands. And in that moment, something shifted in the dynamic. Not in what was said, but in the unspoken structure. And she knew. She knew you were willing to bend your boundaries to keep her smiling. And from that point on, it wasn't just a relationship anymore. It became a test. Silent, unannounced, constant. Let's be brutally honest for a second. Picture this. She's late. You're waiting. No call, no text. Then she arrives, all smiles and charm, a kiss on the cheek, and a little joke. And for a split second, you want to say, "This isn't okay." But you don't. Instead, you smile. You play it cool. You act mature. And maybe in that moment, you thought you were being the bigger person. But in her mind, you were shaving off the first layer of your authority. Let me give you a psychological truth. Nothing complicated, just reality. There's something called the spotlight effect. It means we tend to overestimate how much people notice our behavior. But in reality, they're not watching what we say. They're watching how we react to their behavior. Not how kind you are, not how generous, but how much you shift when they press a little. And in that moment, when you smiled and said nothing, she didn't hear "I understand." She heard, "You can move me." Let me tell you something from Japanese culture. There's a philosophy called kintsugi. When a bowl breaks, they don't hide the cracks. They fill them with gold. They believe strength isn't in perfection. It's in how you reveal your scars. But you, when the first crack appeared, you didn't fill it with gold. You covered it with silence. And silence, when it doesn't come from awareness, is just fear wearing a mask. Let me ask you something simple. If I asked you right now what your standards are in a relationship, could you answer without hesitation? Or would you have to pause, think back to how she behaves, and then shape an answer that doesn't upset her? How many of your values are real, and how many are just reactive? This is the mirror. You're not looking into it to shame yourself. You're looking for clarity. Because if you don't know where you gave ground, you'll never understand why she lost respect. Now here's the truth. These tests are invisible because you were never taught to see them. You were taught to be a good man, but not an aware man, a man who listens but doesn't ask, why did this happen? When did it start? Where did I vanish? And understand this, women aren't cruel by nature, but nature demands they measure strength, not because they want to dominate, but because they want to feel safe in presence. If she can shift your mood with a pout, a comparison to another man, a passive-aggressive comment, you're not attractive, so you're manageable, and women never deeply bond with what they can manage. They may feel affection, they may feel sympathy, but respect, that requires resistance. If you're still with me right now, that means your mind is starting to see through the fog. And I promise you, every minute you stay, you gain a layer of clarity no one taught you before. But there's still one part of this puzzle that flips everything upside down. Most men believe being good wins a woman. But there's a moment in this story where that belief turns into your downfall. And that moment is coming. In a lost South American tribe called the Tapio, they believed that every woman carries what they called a silent lake, still shimmering, inviting. But if a man enters without being ready, he drowns in the depth of silence itself. They used to say, a woman is not the surface, a woman is the depth, and all depths have the right to test you. Now let me ask you again, how many times have you entered a relationship that felt perfect, the laughs, the good morning texts, the late night calls, the subtle touches, and yet something unseen beneath the surface kept pulling at your power, quietly, slowly, like a river current under glass, invisible, but constant. And you, because it felt good, you started to step back. One time it was your standard, another time, your time, then your pride. And one day you looked around and saw yourself standing next to a lake called love, but your voice no longer echoed across it. Now let me paint you a scene. Imagine walking into an ancient temple, statues everywhere, golden light, sacred silence. A priestess approaches you and says, if you want to enter the sanctuary, you must first wear a blindfold. And because you trust her, because the atmosphere pulls you in, because you don't want to seem disrespectful, you put it on. And in that moment, when they take the light from you, they also take your power to judge. Swiss psychologist Carl Jung once said, a woman represents the unconscious of a man. Every woman you meet activates a part of your mind you don't yet understand. What does that mean? It means she tests you, not to play games, but to see how united you are with your own truth. Now step out of philosophy for a second and into art. Pablo Picasso had a famous style, Cubism, everything fractured, multi-layered, abstract, like relationships that can't be explained in simple terms. Picasso once said, I don't paint what I see. I paint what I feel. Women do the same. They don't respond to what you present. They respond to what you radiate. You may sound confident, but if your soul whispers weakness, they hear it. You may act like a leader, but if your standards are flimsy, they feel it. And when they do, they begin to test you, not with words, but with reactions to your lack of reaction. Understand this. Women measure power by resistance, not affection. And this is where most men fall. They think if they are more loving, more patient, more understanding, they'll win her heart. But she doesn't want to see how kind you can be. She wants to know, is there anything, even her, you're not willing to bend for? And if there's nothing you're willing to protect, then there's nothing worth respecting either. You thought your job was to prove you're a good man, but now you're learning. Your job is to stay a whole man first. Women love good men, but only if that goodness isn't just a mask hiding fear. And the only way to prove that, you already know the answer. It's the test. Now it's time to step out of mythology and philosophy and into something solid. One core truth, one nameable rule, one decision that shifts the ground you walk on. And there you'll realize this was never about love. It was always about power. If you've made it this far, you're already standing where most never reach. Most people quit earlier, not because they can't go on, but because they don't want to see. But you stayed, you kept listening. You saw something that didn't sit right, something hidden, yet deeply familiar. And now, it's time to name it. I call it the rule of the silent mirror. Here's how it works. A woman won't believe what you say. She'll observe what you do, but she only truly reacts to what you don't react to. Let that sink in. If she pushes and you don't flinch, if she tests and you don't chase, if she disrespects and you don't explain yourself, she sees herself. She sees her own reflection in your stillness. And in that moment, she's forced to ask, am I the kind of woman who deserves to break this man? And right there, she'll either step back or step in with real respect, but she'll never stay in the middle. Now let's be real. What good is a rule if you don't apply it? So here's something for you to do. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. When the test comes, when she says something that digs a little, when she pulls a boundary just an inch, don't argue, don't reward, don't retreat, just look at her, not with hate, not with anger, with calm, with clarity, with presence. Let her sit with her own echo, instead of using you as an emotional cushion. If you can become the kind of man who uses silence not as escape, but as power, you step into a realm few men even know exists. There's a quote from Tolstoy that says, "A strong man isn't the one who speaks the most, but the one whose silence has weight." If you can draw your boundary not with your voice, but with your energy, she won't cross it. Because she won't want to lose her place next to a man who cannot be moved by chaos. And for that, I say this without hype, congratulations. You've just crossed a threshold most men don't even know is real. You now understand that love and power are not opposites. But unconditional surrender, that's not love. That's the death of self-respect. And today you've chosen something better. You're not begging, you're not proving, you're observing, you're measuring, and you're deciding. Let me ask you a question, and be honest. Are you more afraid of losing her? Or are you more afraid that you were never the man who could keep her? Because if you're still here, still watching, still listening, your strength is already greater than your fears. And that means you're ready for the final step, the place where judgment ends, and you choose how the rest of your life is going to look. Don't go quiet, not with me, with yourself. How many times have you woken up at 2 a.m. with a heavy chest? No real reason, no dream to explain it, just a pressure. How many times have you stared at your phone waiting for a message you knew wouldn't come? And deep down, you knew why. Because somewhere along the way, you gave up pieces of your spine in exchange for peace that never lasted. Let me say it straight, no filter. If a woman can shift you with a joke, a mood, a flirty comparison to her ex, or a moment of cold silence, you were never the man in that relationship. You were an option, one of many, replaceable, tolerated. And the worst part, she might still sleep with you, still call you baby, still post the pictures, but emotionally, she's already pulling the rug out from under your throne. Not violently, gracefully, silently. And you keep thinking, this is just a rough patch. We'll fix it. This isn't a rough patch. This is the death of respect. Wake up, brother. Women don't punish weakness with arguments. They punish it with distance. Not because they're evil, because their subconscious only follows strength. And when you stop giving it, they start removing affection. Let me give you a symbol from ancient Egypt. They worshipped a god called Anubis, the god who weighed your soul after death. And how did he do it? He put your heart on a scale and weighed it against a feather. If your heart was heavier, not with sins, but with unprocessed emotion, guilt, weakness, your soul was devoured. Same thing happens in your relationship. Every time you said sorry just to keep her calm, every time you stayed quiet when your gut screamed, every time you settled for crumbs and told yourself it's love, you added weight to your heart. And now, if she waited, it would drop like a stone. Not because you're a bad man, but because you never shed the dead weight of untested affection. Here's the hardest truth. Most men are still stuck in the illusion that if they just keep being good, she'll one day turn and say, "You're the man I always dreamed of." She won't. She already made her decision the first time you broke your own boundary for her. And what did she decide? She saw you and thought you weren't built to lead. You were built to please. Look at yourself for a second. Not your words, not your hopes, your patterns. How many times did you apologize just to avoid conflict? How many times did you accept the bare minimum just so she wouldn't pull away? How many times did you listen to her talk about another man while you were trying to be different? Every time you did that, a piece of your masculine identity cracked. And she watched. Because it was a test. This is what waking up looks like. It's knowing that if you don't test, you'll be tested. It's knowing that if you don't live in standards, you'll live by emotional weather patterns. And most of the time, those moods aren't even yours. And if a woman can't feel your resistance, your unshakable center, she can never feel safe near you. Because deep down, she doesn't know who you are or what you'll become under pressure. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And if you don't know why your boundaries matter, you'll break them every time the how gets uncomfortable. Eventually, there will be nothing left but a ghost of the man you once were, the man who used to lead himself. But one challenge still remains, one no one talks about, because most men avoid it completely. And that challenge, that's the one that will either rebuild your kingdom or leave you wandering in ruins.